Excuse me, sir. I don't know how you got those fake tickets, but you need to take your family and move to the back where you people belong. Flight attendant Jessica Martinez's voice dripped with contempt as she blocked the aisle of Delta Flight 447. Her eyes swept over David Thompson with disgust, then landed on his wife and daughter with the same dismissive sneer. First class is for paying customers only, not charity cases. Passengers turned their heads. Some reached for phones. David's wife, Dr. Keisha Thompson, sat frozen in seat 2B, their 14-year-old daughter Maya beside her. Martinez stepped closer, blocking David's path completely. Her badge glinted under the cabin lights. "Ma'am, these are our assigned seats," David said quietly, extending the boarding passes. She didn't look at them. "I don't think so." Behind him, teenager Emma Chen lifted her phone and tapped the record. "Have you ever been judged so harshly that strangers assumed you didn't belong somewhere you'd rightfully earned your place?" The cabin speakers crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for Delta Flight 447 to Atlanta. Departure in 12 minutes. Martinez's smile was razor-thin as she turned back to David. "You heard that? We need to resolve this situation quickly." She spoke louder now, ensuring nearby passengers could hear every word. "I'm going to need to see proof of purchase for those tickets." David remained calm, reaching into his leather briefcase. "Of course." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to his email confirmations. "No, sir." Martinez held up her hand dismissively. "I need to see a credit card statement. Anyone can fake an email these days." Her voice carried across several rows. "Especially when tickets this expensive seem suspicious." Dr. Keisha Thompson shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Maya looked up from her book, confusion clouding her young face. "Mom, what's happening?" "It's okay, baby," Keisha whispered, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her medical conference materials. Martinez's eyes narrowed as she noticed David's platinum Delta medallion hanging from his briefcase. She scoffed. "Those can be bought online now. Fake medallions, fake tickets. It's a whole industry." Emma Chen's phone screen showed her TikTok live stream. The viewer count climbed steadily. 847 people watching in real time. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. "This is discrimination. Save this video. Someone tag Delta Airlines. Get their names." The timestamp in the corner read 6:52 p.m. 8 minutes to departure. David pulled out his business card, extending it toward Martinez. The elegant lettering read, "David Thompson, CEO, Thompson Tech Solutions." His voice remained steady, professional. "Perhaps this will clarify things." Martinez glanced at the card and laughed. "Anyone can print business cards. Sir, I've seen every trick in the book." She raised her voice another notch. "People try to sneak into first class all the time. They dress nice, carry fake IDs, even bring their families to make it look legitimate." An elderly white passenger in seat 1C turned around. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" "Just removing some passengers who don't belong," Martinez replied with false sweetness. David's phone buzzed with an incoming message. The preview showed, "Fortune 500 board meeting. Tomorrow 9 a.m. confirmed." He glanced at it briefly, then tucked the phone away. Captain Sullivan emerged from the cockpit, his pilot's stripes catching the overhead lights. He was a tall man in his 50s with graying temples and an authoritative bearing. "What seems to be the issue, Jessica?" His tone suggested he already sided with his crew member. "These passengers have questionable tickets, Captain. I was just explaining our policies." Martinez's confidence grew with backup present. Sullivan looked David up and down, taking in his tailored navy suit, expensive watch, and confident posture. Something didn't compute, but his loyalty lay with his crew. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to cooperate with my flight attendant. If there's a legitimate issue with your ticketing, we can resolve it at the gate." "There's no issue with our tickets," David replied evenly. "We purchased them through Delta's corporate booking system 3 weeks ago." "Corporate booking?" Martinez's laugh was sharp. "What corporation would that be?" David started to respond, but she cut him off. Let me guess. Some small business trying to look important? Keisha stood up slowly, her medical conference badge visible on her jacket lapel. Excuse me, but this is becoming ridiculous. We have every right to be here. Martinez's attention shifted to her. And what makes you think that, ma'am? Because you have a fake doctor's badge, too? The insult hung in the air like a slap. Keisha's eyes flashed with anger, but she maintained her composure. Years of dealing with discrimination in medical settings had taught her patience. Maya tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, why is she being so mean? The question carried through the cabin, and several passengers began looking uncomfortable. A businessman in seat 3A lowered his newspaper, watching the scene unfold. Martinez called toward the front of the plane. Can we get ground crew up here? We need these seats for our standby passengers. Emma's viewer count had climbed to 2,241. She whispered into her phone's microphone. Y'all, this is crazy. This family is being harassed for literally no reason. The flight attendant is being super racist right now. The timestamp showed 6:55 p.m., 5 minutes to departure. David reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a small item, his hospital identification card from Atlanta Children's Hospital, where he served on the board of directors. He also pulled out a letter with official letterhead. But before he could show either item, Martinez waved her hand dismissively. I don't need to see any more fake documents. This has gone on long enough. She pressed the call button on her communication device. This is Flight Attendant Martinez on 447. I need a supervisor at gate B7 immediately. We have a ticketing situation that requires passenger removal. David exchanged a look with Keisha. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod. He reached for his phone and made a quick call. Yes, this is David Thompson, he said quietly into the device. We have a situation on Flight 447. Please proceed with Protocol 7. He spoke for exactly 30 seconds, then hung up. The call was so brief and cryptic that most passengers missed it entirely. But Martinez noticed, and something about his tone made her pause. Sir, who were you calling? She demanded. David simply returned to his seat, pulling out a business magazine. Someone who needed to know about our delay. The wheels were now in motion, though no one in that cabin could have predicted what would happen next. Heavy footsteps echoed through the jet bridge. Brad Kingston, Delta's station manager, appeared at the aircraft door. His navy blazer bore the airline's logo, and his stern expression suggested he'd already made up his mind about the situation. Where's the problem? Kingston's voice boomed across the first-class cabin. Martinez practically ran to meet him. Brad, thank goodness. Row 2. They have questionable tickets and are refusing to cooperate. Kingston marched down the aisle, his bulk imposing in the narrow space. Behind him, 2 airport security officers followed, Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chen. Their presence immediately changed the cabin's atmosphere. Passengers craned their necks to see what was happening. Sir, I'm Brad Kingston, station manager. He positioned himself directly in front of David's seat. I understand there's an issue with your ticketing. David looked up from his magazine, his expression unchanged. No issue at all. We have valid tickets and assigned seats. That's not what my crew is telling me. Kingston's tone was patronizing. Look, I've been doing this for 15 years. I can spot trouble from a mile away. A frequent flyer in seat 3B recognized Kingston and nodded approvingly. Brad knows what he's doing, he whispered to his companion. Dr. Keisha cleared her throat. Mr. Kingston, perhaps you could examine our boarding passes before making assumptions. Kingston barely glanced at her. Ma'am, I don't need to see anything. My crew has excellent judgment. He turned to Martinez. Have you run the tickets through the system? I tried, but there were irregularities, Martinez lied smoothly. The timestamp on Emma's live stream read 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes to departure. Her viewer count had exploded to 5,847 people watching live. Comments flooded her screen faster than ever. This is insane. Call the news. Someone needs to stop this. Where's the pilot? I'm sharing this everywhere. Delta needs to see this. Officer Rodriguez stepped forward, his hand resting on his radio. Sir, we're going to need you and your family to come with us. Maya's voice trembled. Dad, what's happening? Why are they being so mean? David placed a reassuring hand on his daughter's shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make mistakes based on what they think they see. Mistakes? Kingston's laugh was harsh. The only mistake here is thinking you could pull one over on us. I've seen every scam in the book. Captain Sullivan reappeared from the cockpit, now looking agitated and checking his watch repeatedly. Brad, we need to resolve this quickly. Air traffic control is asking about our delay. We have a slot time to maintain. Almost done, Captain. Kingston turned back to David with renewed authority. Sir, these seats will be reassigned to our legitimate standby passengers. You can work out your ticketing issues at the customer service desk downstairs. These are our seats, David repeated calmly, his voice never rising. Kingston's face reddened. Sir, you're holding up an entire aircraft. Do you understand how many people you're affecting? We have 147 passengers who want to get home. He gestured broadly to the other passengers. Several were now openly filming with their phones. The businessman in 3A looked increasingly uncomfortable. A woman in 1D whispered to her husband, This doesn't seem right. They look like a normal family. Normal families don't try to scam their way into first class, Kingston announced loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. Officer Chen spoke into his radio. Control, we have a passenger compliance issue on Delta 447, requesting backup if needed. The radio crackled back. Copy that. Team 2 standing by. Martinez seized the moment to address the entire cabin over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a ticketing discrepancy. We apologize for the inconvenience and expect to have this resolved momentarily. The announcement sparked immediate reactions throughout the aircraft. Are you kidding me? I have a connection to make in Atlanta. This is ridiculous. How long is this going to take? Some passengers directed their frustration toward the Thompson family. A man in row 4 called out, Just take different seats so we can leave. A woman in row 6 added, Yeah, just cooperate and we can all go home. Kingston nodded approvingly at the passenger support. You see? You're inconveniencing everyone. This isn't just about you anymore. Emma whispered frantically into her phone. Y'all, this is getting worse. They're trying to kick this family off the plane, and now passengers are turning on them too. This is so messed up. The comments are going crazy right now. David's phone buzzed with multiple notifications. Text messages appeared on his lock screen. Delta Corporate, emergency escalation in progress, and board meeting prep, all systems ready for tomorrow. He glanced at them briefly, then looked directly at Kingston. Mr. Kingston, I strongly suggest you contact your corporate office before proceeding further. I don't need to contact anyone, Kingston shot back. I have full authority at this station. 23 years with this company gives me that right. Keisha stood up again, her medical conference materials and hospital identification clearly visible. Excuse me, but this treatment is completely unwarranted. We're returning from a medical conference, we have legitimate tickets, and we've done nothing wrong except exist while black. Medical conference? Martinez snorted. What kind of medical conference? The American College of Cardiology Symposium in Los Angeles, Keisha replied with dignity. I presented research on pediatric heart defects. Sure you did, Martinez muttered, just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. I bet you have a PhD, too. Actually, I do. Johns Hopkins, class of 2008. The specific detail made Martinez pause, but she recovered quickly. Anyone can claim anything. Officer Rodriguez moved closer, his hand now on his handcuffs. Sir, this is your final opportunity to cooperate voluntarily. The cabin fell silent except for the low hum of the aircraft's systems. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, some recording, others simply staring. Emma's live stream viewer count climbed past 8,000. David remained seated, but something shifted in his posture. His stillness was no longer passive. It was the quiet confidence of someone holding all the cards. "Officer, before you proceed, I have one question." David's voice was soft but carried throughout the cabin. "Are you familiar with Federal Aviation Regulation 382? Officer Rodriguez paused, uncertainty flickering across his face. "What?" "Federal Aviation Regulation 382. It specifically prohibits discrimination based on race in air transportation." David's legal knowledge was precise and confident. Violating it carries civil penalties up to $27,500 per incident, plus potential criminal charges. Kingston waved dismissively. "This isn't about race. This is about fraudulent ticketing and passenger compliance. Based on what evidence?" David asked calmly, his eyes never leaving Kingston's face. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kingston looked to Martinez for support, but she suddenly seemed less certain of her ground. "Based on my crew's professional assessment and years of experience," Kingston stammered. "Your crew's assessment that a black family couldn't possibly afford first-class tickets legitimately?" David's words were surgical in their precision. The accusation created visible discomfort among the officers and crew. Several passengers shifted in their seats, murmuring among themselves. David's phone rang, the sound cutting through the tension like a blade. The caller ID showed a number with a distinctive corporate format, clearly an executive emergency line. He looked up at Kingston with an expression that was almost sympathetic. "Mr. Kingston, I believe this call might be for you." The phone continued ringing as tension filled every inch of the aircraft cabin. Whatever was about to happen, everyone sensed it would change everything. In her live stream, Emma Chen whispered to her audience, "Something big is about to go down. You can feel it in the air. This family isn't who these people think they are." She had no idea how right she was. David answered his phone with calm authority. "David Thompson speaking." The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Mr. Thompson, this is Janet Williams from Delta's Corporate Partnership Division. We've been monitoring a situation involving your family on Flight 447. Is everything all right?" Kingston's confident expression faltered. His eyes darted to the phone, recognizing the corporate number format that only executives used. A cold dread began forming in his stomach. "Actually, Janet, we're experiencing some difficulty with your ground crew," David replied, his voice carrying across the silent cabin. "They seem to believe our first-class tickets are fraudulent." A collective intake of breath rippled through the passengers. Emma's live stream exploded with comments as viewers realized something major was happening. The chat moved so fast it was impossible to read individual messages. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Thompson. This is completely unacceptable." Janet's voice was urgent, professional. "You're our keynote speaker tomorrow for the $75 million technology partnership announcement. This is absolutely inappropriate treatment." Martinez's face drained of color. She grabbed Kingston's arm, whispering frantically, "Brad, who is this guy? That's Corporate Partnership Division." Kingston was frozen, staring at David's phone as if it contained a bomb about to explode. "$75 million? A passenger in seat 3C whispered to his wife. "Who is this guy?" another muttered, lowering his phone to stare at David with new respect. A business traveler in first class suddenly recognized David's name. "Thompson Tech Solutions. Oh my God, that's the AI company that's been in the Wall Street Journal?" David continued the conversation with measured calm. "The situation involves your flight attendant Jessica Martinez, station manager Brad Kingston, and Captain Sullivan. They've called airport security to remove my family from our assigned seats based on their assumption that we couldn't afford them." "This is a catastrophic error." Janet's voice carried authority that made everyone in the cabin sit straighter. "Mr. Thompson, please stay on the line. I'm conferencing in our CEO's office immediately." Kingston found his voice, though it shook slightly. "Sir, there may have been a misunderstanding." David held up one finger, silencing him while listening to his phone. The gesture was so naturally authoritative that Kingston actually stopped talking mid-sentence. The power dynamic had completely shifted. Mr. Thompson? A new voice joined the call, deeper, more commanding. This is Robert Hayes, Delta's Chief Operating Officer. I'm appalled by what I'm hearing. Captain Sullivan's face went ashen. He knew that name. Hayes was effectively the second most powerful person at Delta Airlines, answering only to the CEO himself. Thank you for taking my call, Robert, David responded with the familiarity of equals. This situation has escalated unnecessarily. It certainly has. Hayes' anger was palpable through the speaker. Mr. Thompson, you're not just our technology partner. You're a board member of our advisory committee. This treatment is inexcusable. The revelation hit the cabin like a thunderbolt. Passengers began murmuring, phone cameras swinging toward David with new interest. The businessman in 3A was frantically texting someone, probably his office. Emma's viewer count soared past 12,000. Comments flooded her screen. Holy shit, he's on Delta's board! This crew is so fired! I can't believe this is happening! Save this video forever! Someone call the news! Martinez stumbled backward, her hand covering her mouth. The confident discrimination that had fueled her actions crumbled into panicked realization. Furthermore, Hayes continued, his voice carrying the weight of corporate authority, tomorrow's partnership announcement with Thompson Tech Solutions represents the largest technology contract in Delta's history. Our AI-powered logistics system depends entirely on Mr. Thompson's company. Officer Rodriguez quietly stepped away from David's seat, his hand moving away from his handcuffs. Officer Chen was already retreating toward the aircraft door, suddenly very interested in his radio. Kingston's phone began buzzing incessantly. The display showed calls from multiple Delta executives, numbers he recognized as people who could end his career with a single word. David gestured to Keisha, who retrieved a document from her medical conference materials. But this wasn't medical research. It was a contract summary with Delta's corporate seal clearly visible. Dr. Thompson, Hayes addressed Keisha directly, please accept my personal apology as well. Your husband mentioned you're our medical consultant for the crew wellness program redesign. The revelation about Keisha hit the crew like a second blow. Not only were they harassing Delta's technology partner, but they were also attacking the doctor responsible for improving their own working conditions. Keisha's credentials weren't just impressive, they were directly connected to Delta's operations. The irony was devastating. The crew was harassing the very people responsible for their employee health programs. The contract details are confidential, David said quietly, but I believe Mr. Kingston and his team should understand the scope of what they're jeopardizing. Hayes didn't hesitate. The partnership is worth $250 million over 5 years. Thompson Tech's artificial intelligence will optimize our entire fleet routing system. We expect 20% efficiency gains and $40 million in annual fuel savings. And the numbers hit the cabin like physical blows. Passengers stared at David with new understanding, some pulling out their phones to Google his company. Additionally, Hayes continued, Mr. Thompson sits on our technology advisory board alongside executives from Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. His recommendations directly influence our digital transformation strategy. A tech worker in seat 2F suddenly perked up. Wait, Thompson Tech Solutions? They developed the airline optimization software that every major carrier wants to license. Maya looked up at her father with confusion and pride. Dad, why didn't you tell them who you were from the beginning? David's smile was gentle but pointed. Because, sweetheart, people should treat us with respect regardless of who we are. Our dignity shouldn't depend on our bank account or job title. The profound truth of his statement settled over the cabin. Several passengers looked ashamed of their earlier reactions when they'd supported the crew's actions. Dr. Keisha stood and addressed the cabin directly. My husband could have pulled out his business cards and credentials immediately, but we shouldn't need to prove our worth to be treated with basic human dignity. Her words carried the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions in operating rooms. Martinez finally found her voice, though it trembled. Mr. Thompson, there's been a terrible mistake. No mistake, David replied calmly. Your actions were deliberate and clear. You assumed a black family couldn't legitimately afford first-class seats. You treated us like criminals without any evidence whatsoever. Captain Sullivan stepped forward, his pilot's authority now meaningless in the face of corporate hierarchy. Sir, I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding. Captain, Hayes interrupted through the phone. You'll be hearing from our flight operations department within the hour. This incident will be thoroughly investigated. David's phone showed another incoming call, this one from CNN Business, which regularly covered major corporate partnerships. Word was already spreading beyond social media into mainstream news. One more thing, Robert, David said into his phone. This entire incident has been live-streamed to over 12,000 viewers. The footage shows clear discrimination and violation of federal aviation regulations. Hayes's response was swift and decisive. Mr. Thompson, effective immediately, the crew members involved will be suspended pending full investigation. Our legal department will review every second of that footage. Kingston's phone had been ringing continuously. He finally answered with shaking hands. This is Kingston. The voice on the other end was loud enough for everyone to hear. Brad, this is Sarah Chen, VP of Ground Operations. What the hell is happening on Flight 447? Sarah, I can explain. You better have a damn good explanation for harassing David Thompson and his family. Do you have any idea what you've done? The dominoes were falling with devastating precision. Each revelation stripped away another layer of the crew's authority and confidence. Emma whispered into her live stream, Y'all, this keeps getting worse for them. The viewer count is climbing like crazy. We're at 13,000 now. David stood slowly, his movement commanding attention throughout the cabin. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet power of someone accustomed to boardrooms and corporate negotiations. Mr. Kingston, Ms. Martinez, Captain Sullivan, you have 30 seconds to decide how this ends. You can apologize sincerely and allow us to take our rightful seats, or you can continue this path and face the full consequences of discriminating against Delta's technology partner and advisory board member. The ultimatum hung in the air like a sword. Emma's live stream viewers had climbed past 15,000. The story was spreading across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram faster than anyone could contain. But David wasn't finished. He had one more revelation that would seal their fate completely. Oh, and one final detail you should know, he said, pulling out an official-looking document with Delta's letterhead. Tomorrow's partnership announcement isn't just about technology. Thompson Tech Solutions is also announcing a $15 million sponsorship of Delta's new diversity and inclusion training program. The silence that followed was deafening. The irony was perfect and devastating. The crew that had discriminated against him was about to be trained by a program his company was funding. Martinez's legs gave out. She sank into an empty seat, the full weight of her actions crashing down on her. She had just humiliated the man funding her upcoming diversity training. Kingston stood motionless, his phone still buzzing with calls from executives he'd never spoken to before today. The cabin was completely silent except for the hum of the aircraft and the soft sound of Emma's whispered live stream commentary. Y'all, this is the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. Justice is happening in real time. A passenger in the back called out, This is better than any movie. Another added, Someone needs to write a book about this. The twist was complete. David Thompson hadn't just revealed his power. He'd demonstrated how quiet dignity and strategic patience could transform discrimination into a teachable moment that would reverberate throughout an entire corporation. But the revelations weren't over yet. David's phone buzzed with another incoming call. This time, the caller ID made even the corporate executives take notice. Ed Bastian, CEO, Delta Airlines. Excuse me, Robert, David said politely to Hayes. I believe your boss wants to speak with me. The cabin fell into an even deeper silence as David answered. Hello, Ed. David, I just got off a call with our board chairman. This is absolutely unacceptable. The CEO's voice carried through the speaker with unmistakable authority. I'm personally flying to Atlanta tomorrow to ensure this partnership announcement goes smoothly. Martinez actually whimpered. The CEO of Delta Airlines was now personally involved in her discriminatory actions. I appreciate that, Ed. Though I have to say, this incident has given me serious concerns about Delta's company culture. Emma's live stream had reached 18,000 viewers. Major news outlets were now picking up the story from social media. Delta discrimination was trending nationally. David, I give you my word, this will be addressed at the highest levels. These employees will face serious consequences. Kingston slumped against the aircraft wall, knowing his 23-year career was over. Captain Sullivan removed his pilot's cap, a gesture of defeat. One more thing, Ed, David continued. My daughter Maya here is starting to think all airlines treat people this way. That would be unfortunate for our partnership expansion plans. The threat was subtle but clear. Thompson Tech had been considering partnerships with other airlines. This incident could cost Delta millions in future business. Maya, the CEO addressed David's daughter directly, I promise you that Delta will do better. Your family deserves nothing but our best treatment. Maya looked up at her father with amazement, then spoke into the phone with teenage honesty. Thank you, Mr. Bastian. Maybe now people will think before they judge families like mine. Her words carried more weight than any corporate apology. The question now was whether the crew would learn from this catastrophic mistake or make their situation even worse. David ended his call with the CEO and looked directly at the 3 crew members who had created this crisis. His expression was calm, but his words carried the weight of corporate authority. Now that everyone understands the situation, let's discuss how we move forward. Martinez stepped forward, her voice shaking. Mr. Thompson, I sincerely apologize. I made terrible assumptions and— Ms. Martinez, David interrupted gently. Your apology, while appreciated, doesn't address the systemic issue here. This isn't about personal feelings. This is about corporate liability and federal law violations. He pulled out his phone and opened his email, scrolling to a message chain that made Kingston's face go pale. I've just forwarded this incident documentation to Delta's legal department, the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights, and the Federal Aviation Administration. David's voice remained steady. According to Federal Aviation Regulation 382, discrimination based on race carries civil penalties up to $27,500 per incident. The precision of his legal knowledge stunned the crew. This wasn't just an angry passenger. This was someone who understood exactly what laws had been broken. Captain Sullivan found his voice. Sir, surely we can resolve this internally. Captain, 3 executives and a CEO have witnessed this discrimination via phone. It's documented on live stream with over 18,000 viewers. Internal resolution is no longer possible. Dr. Keisha stood and addressed the crew directly. Do you understand what you've done? You've potentially violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title II, which prohibits discrimination in public accommodations. Her medical precision extended to legal knowledge, adding another layer of credibility to their position. Additionally, Keisha continued, under 49 U.S.C. Section 41705, airlines that engage in discriminatory practices can face federal sanctions, including route restrictions and financial penalties. Kingston's phone buzzed with a text from his supervisor. Conference room, 1 hour. Bring union rep. But let's talk about the financial implications, David continued, pulling out the contract documents Keisha had retrieved earlier. Thompson Tech Solutions currently manages Delta's corporate travel for 847 employees. That's approximately $4.8 million annually. He paused, letting the number sink in. Our upcoming partnership represents $250 million over 5 years, but contracts of this magnitude include moral clauses and discrimination provisions. Martinez gripped the seat back behind her. What does that mean? It means, Dr. Keisha explained, that documented discrimination by Delta employees could trigger contract review clauses. Your actions today have potentially jeopardized a $250 million partnership. David opened another document on his phone. Section 12.3 of our partnership agreement states that either party may initiate contract review if the other party's employees engage in discriminatory practices that violate federal civil rights laws. The legal precision was devastating. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or bad publicity. It was about quantifiable financial damage. Emma's live stream showed viewers frantically sharing the feed across social platforms. The hashtag Delta discrimination had been joined by hashtag corporate accountability and hashtag Black excellence matters. The immediate financial exposure is significant, David continued methodically. Legal fees for civil rights violations typically range from $150,000 to $500,000. Punitive damages in discrimination cases can reach 7 figures. Kingston was frantically calculating in his head. Even the low end of those numbers exceeded his annual salary. Furthermore, David continued, our diversity and inclusion training sponsorship includes specific performance metrics. Delta committed to zero tolerance for discrimination incidents involving crew members. A businessman in seat 3A leaned forward. What happens if they fail those metrics? David glanced at him. Contract termination clauses become enforceable. Thompson Tech could withdraw from the partnership and seek damages for breach of contract. The passenger whistled softly. That's career-ending for everyone involved. Kingston found his voice, though it cracked. Mr. Thompson, what would it take to make this right? David exchanged a look with Keisha, then turned to Maya. Sweetheart, what do you think fair consequences should be? Maya looked up at the adults who had humiliated her family. When she spoke, her words carried the wisdom of someone who had clearly experienced discrimination before. I think they should learn why what they did was wrong, and make sure it never happens to another family like ours. Her response was more mature than anything the crew had demonstrated. An excellent perspective, David agreed. Here are my requirements for avoiding contract review and legal action. He pulled up a notes app on his phone, typing as he spoke. First, immediate public apology from all involved crew members to be posted on Delta's official social media accounts within 24 hours. Martinez nodded frantically. Second, mandatory completion of comprehensive unconscious bias training, not just for the involved crew, but for all ground staff and flight attendants at LAX. Captain Sullivan's shoulders sagged. He was looking at facility-wide retraining because of his crew's actions. The training program will be 40 hours, conducted by certified civil rights instructors, and include role-playing scenarios specifically addressing racial assumptions in customer service. Third, Thompson Tech will design and implement an AI-powered bias detection system for Delta's customer service interactions. Cost, $2.1 million to be funded through reduced partnership fees. The crew was now funding their own oversight system. This system will monitor customer complaints, analyze interaction patterns, and flag potential discrimination incidents for immediate review. Fourth, Delta will establish a $50,000 annual scholarship fund for underrepresented students pursuing aviation careers. This fund will be administered through the National Urban League. Kingston calculated quickly. That was nearly 2 years of his salary, committed annually. Fifth, a formal commitment that any future discrimination incidents involving Delta crew members will result in immediate termination, not just suspension. The zero-tolerance policy would fundamentally change Delta's approach to discrimination. Dr. Keisha added her own requirement. And sixth, Delta will partner with major medical conferences to ensure healthcare professionals of all backgrounds receive appropriate treatment during travel. Seventh, David continued, Delta will publish quarterly diversity reports showing discrimination complaint statistics and resolution outcomes. Full transparency. The accountability measures were comprehensive and ongoing. David's phone showed another incoming call, this time from CNN Business. The story had reached national news. You have exactly 1 hour to present these terms to your executives and receive approval, David stated. After that, the legal proceedings begin, and these generous settlement terms will no longer be available. Martinez looked desperately at Kingston. What do we do? You accept, Captain Sullivan said quietly, because the alternative is career suicide and possible criminal charges. David's approach was masterful. He wasn't seeking revenge. He was forcing systemic change that would prevent future discrimination while maintaining Delta's business relationship. The live stream comments reflected viewers' amazement. This is how you handle discrimination professionally. He's not just getting justice, he's preventing future incidents. This man is a genius, teaching them a lesson they'll never forget. Kingston's phone rang. He answered immediately. This is Kingston. Brad, this is Senior VP Mitchell. We're accepting all of Mr. Thompson's terms immediately. Is there anything else he requires? The speed of corporate capitulation demonstrated just how much power David wielded. Mr. Thompson, Kingston said with visible relief, Delta accepts all your conditions. We'll have written confirmation within the hour. David nodded calmly. Excellent. Now I believe we have a flight to catch. He gestured toward their seats. For the first time in over an hour, the Thompson family could finally sit down in the seats they had rightfully purchased. But the real victory wasn't about the seats. It was about the systemic changes that would protect countless other families from experiencing the same discrimination. As they settled into their first-class accommodations, Maya looked up at her parents with newfound respect. Dad, how did you stay so calm through all that? David's smile was gentle. Sometimes, sweetheart, quiet power is more effective than loud anger. We just changed how this entire airline treats people who look like us. The lesson was profound. Strategic thinking and corporate leverage could accomplish more than emotional responses ever could. Emma's live stream had reached 22,000 viewers. Justice had been served, but more importantly, future justice had been secured through institutional change. The crew retreated to contact their union representatives and corporate executives. They had learned the hard way that assumptions about race and class could cost millions of dollars and thousands of jobs. Delta Flight 447 was finally ready for departure, but the real journey, toward corporate accountability and systemic change, was just beginning. 3 weeks later, the transformation at Delta was already visible. Jessica Martinez sat in a training classroom at LAX, completing her 40th hour of unconscious bias education. The instructor, Dr. Patricia Williams from the National Urban League, had just finished a case study that felt uncomfortably familiar. Ms. Martinez, can you identify the assumptions made in this scenario? Martinez's voice was quiet, humbled. The flight attendant assumed the passengers couldn't afford their seats based solely on their race. She didn't examine evidence or follow proper procedures. And the impact? It violated their civil rights, created legal liability for the company, and perpetuated systemic discrimination. Her certificate of completion would be personally reviewed by David Thompson as part of the settlement agreement. Meanwhile, Brad Kingston was adjusting to his new role in baggage operations, a significant demotion that came with a 40% salary reduction. His phone buzzed with updates from the AI bias detection system that Thompson Tech had installed. The system had already flagged 12 potential discrimination incidents across Delta's network, leading to immediate interventions and retraining. Captain Sullivan had received his written reprimand and completed mandatory diversity training. More importantly, he was now part of a pilot committee reviewing Delta's customer service protocols. At Delta's corporate headquarters in Atlanta, the changes were even more profound. CEO Ed Bastian stood before the board of directors presenting quarterly diversity metrics for the first time in the company's history. Since implementing the Thompson protocols, discrimination complaints have decreased by 73%. Customer satisfaction scores for passengers of color have improved by 28%. Most importantly, we've prevented 14 potential civil rights violations through our new detection systems. The $50,000 annual scholarship fund had already awarded its first grants to 5 students from underrepresented communities pursuing aviation careers. Sarah Chen, VP of Ground Operations, was personally overseeing the rollout of new customer service training across all Delta hubs. The Thompson incident was a wake-up call, she explained to her team. We're not just preventing lawsuits, we're creating an inclusive culture that actually improves our business performance. The financial results supported her claim. Delta's stock price had risen 3.2% following positive media coverage of their diversity initiatives. Corporate travel bookings from minority-owned businesses had increased by 18%. Dr. Keisha Thompson had become an unexpected advocate for healthcare professional travel rights. Her partnership with Delta had resulted in new protocols, ensuring medical conference attendees received appropriate recognition and service. The American College of Cardiology had publicly endorsed Delta as their preferred airline partner, bringing millions in additional revenue. But the most significant change was cultural. Emma Chen, the teenager whose live stream had documented everything, received a message from Delta's social media team. Your video sparked conversation that led to real change. Thank you for being a witness to justice. Her original TikTok had been viewed 2.8 million times. The hashtag #QuietPower had become a movement celebrating strategic responses to discrimination. David Thompson received an invitation to speak at Harvard Business School about corporate leverage for social change. His case study was now required reading in 3 MBA programs. The diversity and inclusion training program he sponsored had been expanded to 12 major airlines. Industry-wide discrimination complaints dropped 31% in the following quarter. Maya Thompson, now 15, had written an essay about the experience for her college applications. The title, "The Day My Family Changed an Airline." I learned that dignity doesn't require anger, she wrote. Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is strategic thinking combined with quiet strength. The essay had caught the attention of admission officers at Stanford, Harvard, and MIT. Delta's transformation became a model for corporate accountability. Other airlines began proactively implementing similar systems, not wanting to face their own Thompson incident. The National Urban League presented David with their Corporate Leadership Award. During his acceptance speech, he said, "Real change happens when consequences are clear, accountability is ongoing, and systems prevent future violations. Our goal wasn't revenge, it was reform." 6 months after the incident, Jessica Martinez approached David at an aviation diversity conference. "Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you." David looked surprised. "Thank me? You could have destroyed my career. Instead, you gave me education and a chance to grow. I'm now training other flight attendants on unconscious bias. Your response changed my life." The conversation illustrated the difference between punishment and transformation. Delta's quarterly discrimination reports showed consistent improvement. The AI system Thompson Tech designed had been licensed to 3 other airlines, creating additional revenue streams while spreading bias detection technology across the industry. The scholarship fund had grown to $150,000 annually through additional corporate donations inspired by Delta's example. Dr. Keisha's medical conference partnerships had expanded to include the American Medical Association and the National Medical Association, further cementing Delta's commitment to serving healthcare professionals equitably. The Federal Aviation Administration used Delta's new protocols as a template for updating industry-wide anti-discrimination guidelines. Most importantly, hundreds of Black families had traveled on Delta flights without experiencing the discrimination that once seemed routine. The Thompson family's experience had created ripple effects extending far beyond their original 3 seats in first class. Their story proved that strategic thinking, legal knowledge, and corporate leverage could accomplish what protests and lawsuits sometimes couldn't. Systematic, lasting change that prevented future discrimination, rather than simply punishing past acts. The quiet power David had demonstrated that day continued to resonate throughout the aviation industry, creating a new standard for how corporations responded to discrimination and how individuals could effectively demand accountability. Real stories like theirs remind us that touching moments of justice can emerge from the most challenging circumstances. creating life stories that inspire systematic change across entire industries. 2 years later, the Thompson family's impact continues to reverberate across corporate America. David Thompson sits in his Atlanta office, reviewing quarterly reports from 12 airlines that have now implemented Thompson Tech's bias detection systems. The technology born from one moment of discrimination has prevented over 400 potential civil rights violations across the industry. "Dad, the scholarship recipients want to meet you," Maya announces, entering his office with a tablet showing video calls from 5 students now pursuing aviation careers. At 18, Maya has become a sought-after speaker at youth leadership conferences. Her message is simple, but profound. Strategic thinking and quiet dignity can change systems, not just individual situations. Dr. Keisha Thompson's medical conference partnerships have expanded globally. Healthcare professionals from underrepresented communities now travel with confidence, knowing their professional status will be recognized and respected. The ripple effects extend far beyond aviation. Major hotel chains have contacted Thompson Tech to develop similar bias detection systems for their customer service interactions. 3 Fortune 500 companies have hired David as a consultant on strategic responses to discrimination. His approach has become a model taught in business schools. Document everything, understand your leverage, demand systematic change, and focus on preventing future incidents rather than simply punishing past ones. Emma Chen, now a sophomore at UCLA studying social justice and media, reflects on that pivotal TikTok live stream. "I thought I was just recording another airline incident," she says. "I never imagined it would change an entire industry's approach to discrimination." Her original video is now part of a Smithsonian exhibit on digital activism and social change. The transformation at Delta has been complete and permanent. New employee orientation includes a case study of the Thompson incident. Flight attendants learn specific protocols for recognizing and addressing unconscious bias before it escalates to discrimination. The airline's diversity metrics are now industry-leading. Customer satisfaction scores for passengers of color have improved 45% since implementing the Thompson protocols. Most importantly, thousands of Black families have traveled on Delta flights without experiencing the discrimination that was once commonplace. Jessica Martinez, now a senior training instructor, often shares her own transformation story. "The Thompson family taught me that assumptions based on appearance can destroy lives and careers," she tells new hires. "More importantly, they showed me that people can change when given education instead of just punishment." The National Urban League's scholarship fund, seeded by David's settlement demands, has grown to over $500,000 annually. 23 students are now pursuing aviation careers with full financial support. The broader lesson resonates across industries. Strategic thinking combined with corporate leverage can create lasting change more effectively than traditional protest methods. David's approach has inspired a new generation of civil rights advocates who understand that boardroom negotiations can be as powerful as courtroom battles. Real-life stories like the Thompson families prove that Black stories of resilience and strategic thinking can transform entire industries. Their experience demonstrates that touching stories of discrimination can become powerful catalysts for systematic change when handled with intelligence and dignity. These are the life stories that inspire us to demand better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. Maya Thompson, now headed to Stanford University, recently wrote, "My family didn't just fight for 3 airplane seats. We fought for the dignity of every Black family that would board a plane after us." Her words capture the essence of strategic activism, thinking beyond individual grievances to create systematic solutions. The Thompson family's story reminds us that true power lies not in angry confrontation, but in quiet strength combined with strategic thinking. Their legacy lives on in every bias detection alert, every scholarship awarded, and every family that travels with dignity intact. Your voice matters in creating change. Have you witnessed discrimination in travel, work, or daily life? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could be the catalyst for the next wave of systematic change. Did this story inspire you to think differently about responding to injustice? Hit the share button and spread the message that strategic thinking can be more powerful than angry confrontation. And if you believe in the power of quiet dignity and strategic change, subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories that prove Black excellence and intelligent activism can transform entire systems. Hit that notification bell to join our community of changemakers who understand that real power comes from strategic thinking, not just loud voices. Together, we're not just sharing stories. We're creating blueprints for systematic change that protects future generations. Subscribe now and be part of the movement that's rewriting how America responds to discrimination.